Welcome to the recorded conversation, the roundtable for Curatorial Incubator V16, Living in Hope. And we have most of our participants, 6 of the 8 are with us tonight. And I'm Lisa Steele, I'm the Artistic Director of VTAPE, where we acknowledge we're hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit River, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory, which is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations, Métis and the Inuit peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. So having said that, I welcome everyone and everyone who's tuning in later. This will be on our YouTube channel, as I mentioned, and I'll send out the link to everybody so you can share it with your colleagues, your friends, your family. I have a few questions for everybody, and we're going to just go around. We're going to start with Shalon always. And Shalon, I wanted you to think about what was memorable about the workshops way back in the summer. John Paul Rico and Jeannie Randolph gave you some workshops. Anything really memorable that stuck out?
Is that better? Okay, sorry. Feels like so long ago, but I think what I would say kind of right off the bat is I really enjoyed the really intense range that we received from those 2 different speakers. So we had like a pretty kind of dense academic workshop, and then we followed by Jean Randolph, which was sort of really kind of experimental and bordering on the surreal and the fabulous. So that was really wonderful for me, like thinking about that throughout the workshop or throughout the residency, just sort of thinking about those 2 ends of the spectrum and how to bring those together.
Interesting. Yeah. So having some contrast was a good thing.
For sure.
Any suggestions?
I think for suggestions moving forward would be maybe like a point of contact throughout the workshops or sort of throughout the residency, so that it was sort of like continuous. Maybe we check in at some point because it was sort of like, almost like a lecture followed by, okay, go do your thing. So I think maybe something a little bit more interactive throughout would be helpful.
That's interesting. I will definitely keep that in mind. That's a great suggestion. Warren, anything memorable about the workshops?
It was so long ago. It feels like several lifetimes ago. So I can't really talk with specifics about what's memorable because I honestly can't remember that far back. But I do remember really enjoying the workshop, and I agree that just having that very different perspectives being represented in that workshop was really interesting. And yeah, I also agree that having kind of continuous smaller workshops might have been, I think it might have helped me kind of remember things a little bit more in the long run too, instead of having this like one long lecture that I tune in and then tune out. But no, I remember really loving the speakers. So that was something that was memorable to me.
Thanks, Warren. Ivana.
Hi, yeah, I'm with you guys on both counts. I think what was memorable was the diversity of the different speakers and the texts. For me, what was most meaningful was having the opportunity to discuss with the other curators and residents and to kind of hear everyone's varying perspectives on what we were discussing. So I would have, like you two, I would have liked to have even more opportunity throughout to read different texts, engage with different speakers and on the spectrum of academic, non-academic, and to just kind of discuss and argue about things that are relevant to our different programs, and then to have a session at the end to sort of bookend it. And I would have also liked to maybe have a session with the editors that we worked with to kind of get more of a sense of their feedback and what they think about how we can integrate their feedback in the future as we research and write about work that we're curating into programs.
That's great. There will be a question later about the editors, so you can
Mhm.
bring that back
Okay,
to
awesome.
Robin, the workshops.
For me, I think they just came at such a perfect time. I think that, it was funny that we applied to this residency on the concept of hope, or at least I did. I prepared my application before the pandemic kind of had affected us here in Canada, and or most of us, I should say. And so, yeah, to just kind of go into that headspace and to be kind of uncertain about when I would see people next, and when I would have any kind of sense of academic or artistic community again, to receive that acceptance into this residency was just such a kind of helpful thing to buoy me. And then to see everyone, to meet new people, it felt so novel and kind of impossible outside of this circumstance. So to be kind of back in an environment where, that I've missed from grad school, to be talking to people about really interesting texts and to kind of have instructors again. As someone who teaches, I kind of miss that, being a student in that way. So yeah, I enjoyed that, all of that for sure.
Okay. Karina.
Yeah, I really appreciate everything that has been said before. Shalon, I think you started off with really strong points about the way that the two speakers sort of gave very different perspectives. That was really great. What stood out for me was this really creative academic work of Jean-Paul Rico, how he brought all of our topics and themes together into one flowing, enigmatic kind of lecture. That was incredibly inspiring for me. What would I suggest? I think it would be really great to have two speakers that are already in conversation. So I could imagine perhaps a curator and a filmmaker, and from a previous program, two people who had worked together. So perhaps, Yemia Lee and then Dana Inkster. So two people somebody from her previous program and then somebody who has been through the program before. That might be really interesting, just to have a conversation with people, to continue conversations. I love that kind of sustainability to the conversations that we're having.
Great ideas. Madeline.
Oh, I like all of these suggestions so much. And it is weird to think back to our first workshop last summer, which does, as Warren said, seem like kind of several lifetimes ago. It was the first time that I had participated in anything over Zoom that I didn't already know the people involved. And so I was a little unsure of what that was going to be like. But apropos of the theme of living in hope, I actually found it really invigorating and really nice. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed talking to everybody. And the workshops, the workshops by Jean-Paul Rico and Jean Randolph were wonderful. And as it's been said, really, really different energy spectrum, which I thought was really fun and I really appreciated. I would also like to have had more, I think it would have been great to have more check-ins throughout the residency. And I think that would have been nice.
Great, okay, terrific. The resources, just briefly, you during your research period, you obviously needed access to resources, different things. Just starting with Shalon, were we able to provide those in a timely fashion, and were they accurate? And do you have any suggestions for us?
Sorry, I keep muting myself.
That's okay, don't worry.
Yes, the resources, I mean, I love being in the archive. That was wonderful. I will say there were several times where I needed to access things that were not readily available through the archive. And sometimes there was sort of a lack of communication on that front. I would email about a question, I need this, and then sometimes I wouldn't hear back. So, I'd have to send several emails, or actually sometimes I think I just kind of gave up on a thing. So to be totally honest, that was kind of my experience with some of the resources that weren't just readily available in the archive. but then again, the archive itself was wonderful. So.
Okay. Warren.
Yeah, I really enjoyed having that opportunity to dig through the archives and looked at different things. I haven't had a lot of problems with accessing anything in the archives. So for me, I had a very great experience with that. But yeah, aside from that, were there other resources that you wanted us to comment on?
I think that some people maybe used some of the online critical writing index. That's possible, or some of the other resources that are online with there. And was there anything? But I think mostly what you were doing. Also, some of you, and you did also contact other distributors to get access to other materials outside of the VTape archive. So did that go okay?
It did. It took a little bit of time, and there was a little bit of and it was my own fault. I should have reached out earlier with some of these things, but yeah, there was sometimes a little bit of delay in responses, which made coordination between me, VTape, and the other distributor a little bit messy at times. But I thought overall it was a great experience and a great learning experience for myself.
Okay, great. Ivana.
Yeah, I had no trouble at all. I mostly was looking at videos that were digitized, and that's the great benefit of digitization these days. But as Shalon mentioned, that's also the nature of working with archives that aren't accessible during a pandemic. If something's not digitized, it may need to be digitized for you, or if that doesn't happen, then you don't have access. So in my case, I just didn't run into anything like that. So everything was really, really smooth.
Robin.
Yeah, I didn't have any problems at all. I worked entirely within the archive. And yeah, I came to my program very early on in the process. It just kind of clicked for me, which isn't my usual curatorial process. Usually things are a little more painstaking, but this kind of came together in a way that I was really happy with early on. And then I just used having access to the archive for those months after that kind of initial curatorial process was just kind of a delight. Like, it was just nice to be able to look through other videos and to research things, and to actually watch things that I have written about or talked but only seen kind of snippets of. It was so fun to have full access to video art, which is just such a rare, usually it's like emailing the artist, waiting, but there's so many complications in accessing those videos. So it was really enjoyable.
That's terrific. Karina.
Yeah, for me, the one sort of physical resource that I used was the online database, and it worked really quickly for me to find everything online. It wasn't possible for me to be in Toronto to go physically to the archive. I think all of you who were actually physically able to be there, that's a really wonderful experience. Other than that, the best resource was the people. I mean, I think the staff at VTape was incredibly helpful. Through this process, my films have come into distribution because I curated one of my own films, Repair. And so I was in contact with your distribution coordinator. And also before we did the Instagram Live, which I'd never done before, Kira was in contact with me and really just was such a wonderful cheerleader, and working with Wanda Vanderstoop, everybody. And of course, you, Lisa, like that's the best resource from this project.
That's great. Okay, Madeline.
Yeah, I had one film that I chose that wasn't digitized, and so you guys were generous enough to digitize it for me, and I was really appreciative of that. I work in a distribution department at another media arts center, and so I know all the sort of sometimes like hoops that things have to go through, or finding a tape and getting it digitized, and so I was really appreciative of that labor, especially during like the really heart of the pandemic, when everything was just a little more complicated. I didn't access the critical writing index to the extent that I would have liked to, but because I was still a student at the time, I kind of used it almost as like a bibliography, where I would see the text, sort of use it as a search function, and then go and use my library access through the university to access some of those texts. So I still found it really useful, even if I wasn't accessing the texts through VTape.
Okay, this is really very helpful. And just keep in mind that you guys and probably the next group will be really the only, prior to this, it would be almost everybody would have been in Toronto. And if they weren't in Toronto, then we always said, we don't really have travel funds, so you have to tell us how you're going to get here for the workshops and how you would plan on doing your research. But the research can always be done online because of the preview site. And so that, but being in the office, often critical during Curatorial Incubator, someone years ago when we did the one called That 80s Show, John Davies, who is now a curator and a writer and editor and everything else, John had a stack of 3/4-inch videos because in the 80s, everything was on U-matic. And he just sat in the viewing room and physically watched like probably 60 titles to come to his, you know, he just would get them off the shelf, come in and spend 2-3 hours, come back the next day or 2 days later. And so physically to not have, now we were very little digitization had happened at that point. So that when people did the Curatorial Incubator, they had to be in the office to do it. So it really did start very locally and then has gradually, as we've digitized more, come out of that. I think not this time, but by the following, by number 18, we will be back in the office, obviously, and be able to have people. And that is really rich because then you can physically talk to people. You can physically look at the work on the shelves, which some people find very energizing and illuminating just to see it and to look at that vast collection. But it's so helpful to be able to actually work at home. And we couldn't have done this if we hadn't had so many resources already done. So thank you guys for all those ideas. So Ivana started this, but we'll start with you, Shalon, about the editors. What was your experience of working with the editors?
My experience was fantastic. I got so lucky because I got to be paired with somebody that was like one of my art crushes. So that was fantastic. Erica de Freitas was my editor. And honestly, the process with that was utterly seamless. We had a really great back and forth. She offered me a lot of valuable feedback. Have nothing but good things to say about that process. And it was very enriching for me and for my program to work with Erica.
Terrific. Okay, Warren.
Yeah, I had a great experience working with my editor. The notes that I got from him were very helpful and insightful and really helped just kind of bring out what I was trying to say in my writing originally. I think with my editor, I think he got busy or something, and there was at the very end, the final revisions where he had to like say that he approves of it for you guys. I think there was like a little bit of miscommunication there where he didn't quite get back on time. So that was a little bit of a hiccup there. But other than that, I had a great experience with my editor.
Remind me who your editor was.
I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but I can look at it right now.
I had roughly, but I just didn't bring them up with me. Ivana.
I also got paired with one of my art crushes. I feel like even saying art crush is an understatement. I would go so far as to say one of my greatest art loves, Joanna Householder. I've been a fan of her work for a long time. Her performances, her videos, the clichettes. I remember in your performance art class in undergrad watching their work for the first time and totally falling in love with it and writing about them. And it was just like so fantastic when I received that email and saw her name. And it was fantastic, the experience working with her and getting her feedback, and we just like totally meshed, and she really got what I was going for, and her edits made my text so much stronger, and it was, yeah, only the best of things to say about that experience. So thank you for yeah, I've never really worked with an editor quite in that way before, so thanks for providing that opportunity.
Robin.
So I worked with Nahed Mansour, and I also had a really great experience. Working with them was seamless, and you know, like others have said, really strengthened my text. I'm really grateful for the edits, and yeah, I think that my work was better because of that. So yeah, just positive.
Karina.
I had a wonderful pairing as well. I got to work with Warren Krishlow, and it was absolutely a really wonderful experience. That was such a gift. The best part was, as I said before, I curated one of my own films, and I was kind of unsure about it until I got to work with Warren, and he convinced me that it made so much sense, and that in a way, you know, the film was almost like another curatorial statement within the project. And just hearing his textual analysis and reading of my film was such a gift. So that was an excellent pairing. I was really happy with the working with my editor.
Terrific. Okay, Madeline.
I had a really good experience working with my editor, Frances. I found her input to be really insightful, very kind and generous. And so, yeah, I was really appreciative of that. Just thinking about some of the things we'd said earlier about how it might be beneficial to have these sort of more like spaced out workshops. I think that, you know, we all had such good experiences working with our editors that they might be good candidates to sort of lead those workshops. Mm-hmm. And that way we could get to know them a little bit better and have more extended conversation.
Okay. I always consider it to be one of the unique resources that we offer to the Curatorial Incubator is the opportunity to do some writing, obviously, but to work with an editor on that writing, and that I think is because curatorial work must involve writing. It goes together. It's not just a, you know, as we say, it's not just, you know, home decorating. Like you're not just picking out the lamps and stuff. You're really doing some, putting some meaning into selections that you make, and then and how those selections, particularly in a program, a time-based program, how those selections then work together. So the editors are very important, and I think that's I'm very glad to hear from all of you. I think.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How did you decide who to pair with which editor? I'm really curious what your thought process was there.
Well, I tried to look at the idea and see if I could, you know, somewhere. And I mean, you know, I'm quite old, and I know many, many people, and I've known them for, you know, in various ways. So I try to, you know, get my mojo working and try to conjure up what people's thoughts, how they could go together. You know, what I try not to do, and this, I know I have colleagues who I'm sure would do it very differently, where they might really put, oil and water together in order to make something, you know, some combustion happen. And that isn't ever my intention. I really try to get to where I at least have a feeling that there's going to be some meaningful communication, because it's a short time period always, you know, it's not a big fee, and, you know, everyone's busy and stuff. So, you know, I try to make it meaningful for not just the incubatees, for you guys, but also for the editors. And I got terrific feedback from all of them who really enjoyed the process. So I have no real answer to that. I just do my best.
Oh, it's a great answer. No, that's a great answer. Thank you.
Okay. I want to just talk because we have 15 minutes left. The online presentations, this of course is completely different than anything we've ever done. We probably will always have even when we're back on site, we have agreed, all of us at VTape, that we'll probably keep some of our programming happening online, because it's just so available, you know, and it means international audiences, which we got, and you know, all kinds of things like that. So we will still do some of this, but you're the first Curatorial Incubator people who weren't in a live audience, and I would like, starting with Shalon, to What was that experience like? And do you have any suggestions for the next group if they are also online, or just, I don't even know what the question is, but
yeah, I think I know where you're going with it. You know, there was like a little bit of a sadness just around the, you know, I think part of curating a show and the great, like, you know, it's like being in the theater. You do it because like of the event of the theater. It's like curating a show, you do it at the event of the actual, like, sharing that joyous moment. So there was like a little bit of a lack there, obviously, but you know, it was interesting to have the experience because I also have never curated an online show before. And so, you know, it was nice to just sort of like open up my horizon to that possibility. And it was actually quite lovely, you know. I was quite surprised. I had several people email me afterwards, which was just sort of like a nice little gift. I was like, oh, they actually watched it, you know. So there was like remnants of that, what I thought would be utterly missing, present, but just in a very different way.
Okay. Warren.
Yeah, so just to quickly go back to your last question, my editor was Gareth Long.
Okay.
So for this question, because my program was all about examining like digital worlds, and that has always been my research interest. That's been my motivations as an artist as well. It felt like a really natural fit for me to do something online. Yeah, that seems like just a very natural fit, and it was also great. It was also great because it allowed me to showcase this to all my friends and family back home in Vancouver as well. So being able to just have my program be seen by people outside of Toronto was also very nice for me. From the beginning of the pandemic, I had kind of anticipated that when things kind of get back to normal, the ways that we have adopted digital platforms in film screenings and exhibitions and things, that's something that's going to be here to stay. And so I kind of just saw it as being a little bit ahead of the curve in that sense of being able to have this experience right now. So yeah, I had a great experience having my program be in this digital space.
Ivana.
I'm quite torn because on the one hand, like everyone so far has suggested, having the programs online made them more accessible, and it meant that people across Canada and internationally could watch them. But on the other hand, there's nothing like sitting in a dark space with other people and taking something in and getting that feedback. Even if it's not verbal feedback, you almost like feel the vibrations in the space. And that's just always been important to me, and I'm hopeful that that will get to happen soon. So I hope that VTape will continue to do online programming as well as in-person programming. So there's options for everyone. And the other thing about that too is that video art can often be very long and awkward and intentionally boring. And there's something about forcing people to sit in a space and sit through it. There's a reason for that. I wonder if anyone's actually watched Michael Snow's Wavelength, like from beginning to end, just on their screen at home. It's just not the same. So I don't know. I wish that we could have done it not during COVID time, but I of course prefer having done it during COVID time than not having done it at all.
Thank you. Robin.
Yeah, I also wasn't sure how it would go. I don't know about everyone else, but I find that because I interact with so few people now, that anytime I'm put in even a digital social environment, it's like a little bit nerve-wracking. It's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? This could be a wild card. Like I can either be suddenly very eloquent or suddenly like just can't remember my own name. And so I think I was very nervous to have these even the introduction, but the talk and how that would go, and if there would be tech glitches and if I would be thrown by them. And I think once I got into the conversation, I was just enjoying it so much. And all of my artists were so generous and talkative and thoughtful, and that I think all of those nerves kind of went away. And I think, like Ivana, obviously I would have loved to be with everyone. But in lieu of that there aren't, you know, I didn't feel compelled this year to curate a physical exhibition, but there was something about the video art and the screening and that felt possible and felt exciting. And those talks helped to animate it, I think, for me.
Right. Karina.
Yeah, I appreciate, Robin, what you just said about the artist talk. And I have to think also about what Warren said. My artist talk was with Tirza Cuthan and Penny McCann, who are in 2 different cities. And I think that, you know, being online really facilitated that, although it would have been really wonderful to have them in one place. Like maybe Tirza and I could have gone to Ottawa or something like that. But yeah, Ivana, what you said about the in-person experience, I remember going to one of the Curatorial Incubator openings with Kate Berry, who she's somebody who also really encouraged me to apply for this. And it's still such a memory, you know, being there, experiencing V-tape, as you said, going in and out of the dark room, experiencing things that were uncomfortable, you know, having a glass of wine with somebody, getting to know them, walking around, the whole thing. That I think was tried to be recreated through, you know, that Instagram Live experience. And I guess the translation was, you know, people messaging you while you're live and understanding that people actually are there, that there are people on the other side of the screen, you know. So it is a give and take. I think in the future, some sort of hybrid would be really great. So to really continue this accessibility, people aren't always able to be there in person, and this kind of fetishization of the in-person, I think we have to get maybe away from that after the pandemic. But definitely, I mean, I would really love to be in the same room with all of you some point in the future. To meet you in person would be really great.
Wonderful. Madeline.
I was really nervous leading up to the introduction of the program and the discussion with the artists. I think more so than I have been in the past when I've had to do sort of public speaking events. And I think the sort of void of doing it online did make me really nervous. That said, both are pretty good experiences. You know, it was a pretty warm conversation, and I'm, you know, really grateful for Lisa for setting it up and for the artists who participated. So yeah, I think it was an adjustment for sure. I keep going back and forth about, you know, on one hand, I really miss in-person screenings. I miss the sort of like spontaneous conversation that happens. As Ivana was saying, I miss, like, my attention span is limited by sitting in front of, like, when I'm sitting in front of my computer, what I'm sort of able to digest, or so I miss the setting of going to screenings. But at the same time, I've also been able to see a lot of things. Like right now, I have a pass to to EMAF, and I'm watching a ton of great stuff that I probably wouldn't be able to see otherwise. So as somebody who programs film, I'm thinking about that a lot. I'm thinking about how to navigate going forward to sort of maintain that level of accessibility without sacrificing that sort of the sociality of in-person screenings.
Yeah. Well, one of the, what I always have said to the incubatees, as we were in the research phase and all the rest of it, and then the editing, but just saying the final thing is to be in a room with people and to play your program plays. And what then you get to see what the effect of that program is. Like, what does it do to people? Do they laugh at a point when you thought they wouldn't? Are they not laughing at something that you thought was hilarious? Like it's a real roller coaster to be right in that room, and that's part of the experience. And you guys didn't get it, but you got something different, which is to be pioneers, which you are. Now you are the first online curatorial incubator, and you know, don't forget that you paved the way. So for if we have to do it again this year, you will have been there first. And you know, if that looks like it's going to happen, I might enlist all of you to, you know, maybe to come back and talk to give some advice to our next round. But it really is a part of it, and there's no way around it. That the online will be a component for sure, because it's a way of getting the material out, making it available. Our website is, you know, we have our Vimeo channels, we have all kinds of ways. And just the final thing before Shalon has to go, the conversations after, that is something that really has never been possible. At most, people would have maybe one artist who happened, if they happen to have programmed a Toronto artist, you know, and otherwise, you know, I mean, our artists from all over the world, but certainly all over the country. And so that was really exciting to me. And so that was something that would have never been able to happen other than through the platform we had. So I just want to get your thoughts on the conversations after, and how they worked, what they meant to you, and Shalon, start. And Shalon, if you have to leave, just leave.
Okay, thank you.
But
I might actually be able to stay a little bit longer. So
okay. Terrific.
The conversation after was, I was extremely nervous going into it because, you know, like you said, Lisa, we got this opportunity to talk to artists we probably otherwise wouldn't if it was a live format thing. And frankly, I was just really nervous because Shelley Nero was on my panel and I was like super scared. But it was phenomenal. It was amazing. I had the most wonderful, heartwarming experience. And honestly, it sort of brought me to tears. It was like an extremely moving talk that ended up being much sort of warmer. And, you know, in my mind, I had built it up into this like, oh my God, I'm interviewing an art star and it's going to be a nightmare. And it was the complete opposite of that. It was sort of like sitting around having tea. It was truly lovely and a very, very nice way to wrap up my program. So I'm very grateful for that experience.
That's great. Okay. Warren.
Yeah, so when I was preparing for that Q&A, initially what I had done was that I prepared all my questions with kind of planned segues from one question to another between the three artists that I was going to talk to. But then when the interview was happening, one of the artists wasn't able to attend. So that kind of threw me off a little. And to be honest, that I was thrown off and by that a little bit, but hopefully I did okay anyway. That being said, yeah, I really enjoyed having that opportunity to talk to artists. I always think of Q&As as being very important to screenings like this, just having a chance for the artists to kind of talk about their own work and talk about their perspectives. And I think if things go back to it being in person, it's always a possibility to do like a pre-recorded conversation ahead of time and then show that at the end of the screening. And I think that would be very nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's definitely something I'm thinking about. And I think when you asked the artists, you asked Alejandro and Nishimura.
Yeah.
Yeah, what their experience was of shows, having their work online. Mm-hmm. And that was really good. Mm-hmm. I appreciated that because I hadn't thought to ask the artists that because I was thinking more about you guys. And so anyway, Ivana, the conversation.
In this case, I really appreciated it having been on Zoom because artists from all over the world got to call in via video. So Akram Zaatari called from, I believe he was in Beirut at the time. Nicholas Vollmer and Laura Kissel were in the United States, and Zach Khalil from New Red Order was somewhere in Canada, but I'm not sure if he was in Toronto. So the only way it was possible was to do it on Zoom. And like Shalon, I also thought it might be kind of awkward because going into a panel in real life, you at least kind of have, you know, you might even have a coffee or a drink before you shake hands, you kind of have small talk at least, whereas on Zoom, you meet and you're just like expected to ask questions and speak right away, and it can be very strange. But in this case, it was, yeah, like Shalon said, very, very warm. I think the artists, I could tell, I think had a really good time, and I got some good feedback from them after as well. It seemed like they enjoyed talking about their work on that platform. So thanks for organizing that as well, Lisa.
Your your conversation was really nice for me because Akram's a very old friend, so it was nice to see him.
Yeah, and he just actually sent me his book about his time capsule piece. His gallery from Beirut sent it to me, and it was really nice to make that connection with him. We've still been emailing. He's in Paris now and told me about what he's working on, and it's a really, really cool opportunity to get to meet these artists. So to anyone watching who's going to be in it next year, who's thinking about applying to VTape, that is certainly a highlight.
Great. Okay, good. Robin.
Yeah, I think I spoke a little bit to it in my last answer because I didn't properly distinguish between the screening of the films and the discussing of the films. But yeah, it was a very positive experience for me. I hadn't really I think I didn't even expect that it was going to happen. I don't know, maybe I zoned out or something during the initial meeting, but I remember when I learned that I had already kind of chosen my titles, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm also going to talk with, sorry, my cat is, okay. And, you know, I just really, I felt a little bit nervous, but it went so well. And it was such an enjoyable conversation that I'm really glad it happened. I also didn't really think that, yeah, this would be the first year that would have been possible, that this isn't possible when it's not online. So yeah, maybe something to consider bringing forward even when things go back to being primarily in person, is that kind of online discussion really, I thought, added a lot, or I hope anyway.
Yeah. Karina.
Yeah, it was great to speak with, as I said, Theoza Cuthan and Penny McCann. It was in January, so just after beginning of the new year. And I have to say, I think we allowed the somberness of that post-holiday time and also this new year in a pandemic. We gave that space in our talk. I think it's really important with all of this online content that we are creating and putting online, that to mark the space in which it's being created. Like even right now, you know, we're all in lockdown and we're worried about our families. We've all probably experienced the death of a loved one or somebody that we know. I know that Penny McCann was getting ready to go to a funeral online, which is a totally other, you know, new experience that we're all, you know, having to contend with. So it was great that we had, as I said, space for all of those different emotions that we're experiencing now. But the conversation, I mean, was really wonderful. It was intimate because it was the three of us. And what was great is that they also asked me questions, you know, so put back to me some of the same questions, talking about also our practices. And it was wonderful to think through and to see our films in conversation.
Wonderful. Madeline.
By, I guess, like virtue or burden of alphabetical order, I went first, and so I really didn't exactly know what to expect. This is back in September now that I had my talk, and so I think I'm glad that I like didn't have time to over prepare, because I think that's often my downfall. And it was really nice. I was like pretty starved for conversation at the time, so that was absolutely lovely. I was super intimidated. I was able to sit down and chat with Lisa and Steve Ranke and JP Kelly and Paris Duanushapur and Ryan Fairco. And they're all such amazing artists whose work I appreciate so deeply that it was absolutely intimidating, but it was super nice to chat with them, and they were all really generous with their time and with just with their discussion with me and with one another. So yeah, it was really lovely.
Well, I wanted to thank all of you. And I think, I don't think you zoned out, Robin. I don't think at the very beginning I said anything about this conversation, because it didn't occur to me until, certainly not when we were doing workshops and stuff like that, because I think it came up maybe in a V-Tape staff meeting or something. We were talking about things, and they were like, well, this could happen. I'm like, whoa, that could happen. We'd already talked about the introductions, and we changed halfway through, didn't we? We did some of them Instagram Live. So you would have been Instagram Live, Madeline. And Warren, you were probably Instagram Live. And I can't remember when we changed, but about halfway through, we then went to Zoom Live, because it was, there was something we were having some issue with Instagram Live, and we thought, okay, we'll go to even though we did do a big talk on Instagram Live with Yanni Ali and Andrea Fatona that was quite well attended. And so there's different platforms to use for different things. And it's been a tremendous learning curve for me. You guys have been amazing to work with. Thank you all very much. And we will sit down for a drink at some point, all in one place, I promise you.